Tonight, the list of Mark Carney's nation-building projects and the challenges getting them off the ground. What the Prime Minister promised to accelerate and where.
How can we do it bigger? How can we do it faster?
And the mixed reaction. The late-breaking details in the political assassination of Charlie Kirk. What we are learning about the manhunt.
I have no need for any publicity, thank you very much.
And how a Canadian man was falsely accused of the crime. And shock for The Rock at TIFF.
When Dwayne gets out of the car, call him Dewey, because that's his family name. Nobody knows that.
What led to the surprise family reunion on the red carpet?
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina.
Good evening. Billions for the Canadian economy and tens of thousands of Canadian jobs. That was the Prime Minister's pitch today when he unveiled the first 5 nation-building projects the government insisted it will help fast-track. They include doubling liquefied natural gas production in Kitimat, BC. A nuclear power project in Bowmanville, Ontario will be the first small modular reactor in a G7 country, expanding the Port of Montreal's capacity. The first net zero copper mine in Saskatchewan, and expanding the Red Chris mine in northern BC. And Mark Carney says more projects will be unveiled before the end of the year. But there are questions about Ottawa's financial commitment. CTV's Abigail Beeman starts us off.
Mark Carney tried to drive home his message.
It's a single point of contact to get nation-building projects built faster.
Announcing the first 5 projects to be greenlit and more in development, led by a former energy executive at the new Major Projects Office.
To get to one project, one review, one decision in a 2-year time frame, we'll set Canada apart globally.
The Prime Minister acknowledged several are already further along, like LNG and Kitimat. He says in all cases, engagement with Indigenous groups is very advanced, and within 5 years,
Some of those projects, shovels will be in the ground.
This is pathetic.
The opposition leader says next to nothing has been done.
He's not permitted a single major mine, pipeline, nuclear plant, or anything else.
In a new spend less, invest more environment, the Prime Minister says being more efficient doesn't cost much. It's not clear how much Ottawa will spend otherwise.
We expect with the vast majority of these projects that federal dollars will catalyze many multiples of private dollars.
CTV News asked the Prime Minister what success looks like. He said in part it's about changing attitudes so people believe Canada can build big. The next list of projects, he says, will be released by the Grey Cup. That's November. Abigail Beeman, CTV News, Edmonton.
Premiers from several provinces were quick to respond to the list today, so were Indigenous leaders. CTV's senior political correspondent Michael Couture has the reaction.
Finally, they get it.
Alberta's premier is encouraged by the Prime Minister's plans, even though a pipeline wasn't part of them. The province's Pathways Plus carbon capture project is on a secondary list, and Danielle Smith is signaling she's going to work with Ottawa.
Hopefully in time for that next tranche of announcements and at the Grey Cup. But I would just encourage Albertans to not lose faith in the process. Let's work together on it.
Upgrades to the Port of Churchill in Manitoba is also on that secondary list. It's the only Arctic seaport in this country serviced by rail.
For us, the big play is, can we get our port in the north going to help Canada get its resources to international markets?
BC has 2 projects on the first list, and the Premier says there's even more opportunity.
British Columbia is going to be the engine of the new Canadian economy that we're building, that's more independent, that is delivering to global markets.
Some First Nations leaders say tensions are building over the lack of consultation.
There's nobody that is going to come into Manitoba and attempt to build any major project without speaking to First Nations.
2 diametrically opposed forces that are destined to, at some point, clash.
Grand Chief Phillip also criticized the Prime Minister's Indigenous Advisory Council for major projects, saying it does not replace the legal duty to consult with First Nations peoples within the territories impacted by future projects. Omar,
All right, Mike, thank you. And joining me now is CTV's chief political correspondent, Vassy Kapelos. Vassy, it's one thing to accelerate the approvals process and another to actually get these projects built. Talk to us about some of the major hurdles ahead.
Two things I'd identify, Omar: time and money. The promise today is to expedite the approval process, but construction of some of these projects can take a really long time. LNG Phase 1, for example, between the announcement and coming online, took about 9 years. Money will also be an issue. Some of these projects want more of it from the federal government. No explicit promise today to do that.
This announcement, of course, coming as Mark Carney's caucus gathers in the energy heartland of Alberta, and yet no project greenlit for that province. But if you listen to Danielle Smith, the Premier doesn't actually seem that concerned. So could it signal that there's something in the pipeline, so to speak, for Alberta before Carney's November Grey Cup deadline to announce more projects?
It's a great question, because if there was one thing that jumped out at me today, it was Premier Danielle Smith's reaction. It was almost counterintuitive given the tensions between federal Liberals and her party and her government for years now. That is the main takeaway. And what I'm told by a source in her office is that a communication was made between the Prime Minister and her, explicitly giving them the belief that there would be at some point on that list a pipeline tied to pathways, which he intimated today, and that has done a lot to assure her, and in turn, she is doing a lot to assure Albertans. Omar?
All right, Vassy, thank you. Let's get to some breaking news now on the hunt for the shooter who killed conservative activist Charlie Kirk. Authorities have released new images and video of the person of interest, showing a man in a black shirt, a hat, and jeans leaving the scene yesterday. Kirk was shot dead during an event at Utah Valley University.
Upper building, he's going to come out on the right, moves to this far right corner. As he does, he's going to climb off the edge and then drop down to the ground. As he did that, he left some palm impressions. There's some smudges, some places we're looking to collect DNA.
And joining us now is CTV's Washington Bureau Chief Joy Malbon, who has been listening in, and police saying that the manhunt's still very much active. Joy, they've received 7,000 tips from the public, the most they've received since the 2013 Boston Marathon bombing. Tell us a little bit more about that video and the images that were released today.
Yeah, police are really hoping that the public can help and identify this man. And they released that new video of this person. You see him on the roof of a building, running and then jumping, escaping into the woods near the scene of the murder. He's wearing black and a shirt with an American flag and he appears to be of college age. He is considered a suspect in connection with the targeted killing of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. And it is a key piece of evidence. Police also found a high-powered rifle near the scene. They're analyzing a number of things written on the unused shell casings. They are hoping that the public and all these tips will help them out.
And such an emotional scene earlier, Joy, when Charlie Kirk's body was flown home. The Vice President of the United States and also Charlie Kirk's widow, Erica, joining in bringing that casket home.
Yeah, Omar, Vice President J.D. Vance, who was very close to Charlie Kirk, he flew his body home to Phoenix on Air Force Two. You can see him placing his hand on the casket. He's comforting Kirk's wife, Erica, and their young family. President Trump announced that he will award Charlie Kirk with the Presidential Medal of Freedom, and he lashed out at the killer and blaming what he calls radical left lunatics for the political violence that is dividing America. Omar?
CTV's Joy Malbon in Washington with those late-breaking developments. Joy, thank you for this tonight. Well, that shooting has terrorized a Canadian man who has become the victim of an online lie. The retired Toronto banker was falsely accused of being a suspect in the political assassination. He spoke to CTV's Adrian Gobriel and says there were threats that weren't just targeted at him.
Michael Mallison went from watering his plants to receiving a flood of threatening messages on social media.
Calling me all sorts of names.
Your daughter was receiving messages as well.
Saying if Michael Mallison is your brother or father, then this and this is going to happen.
Following the shocking shooting in Utah, this fake Fox News account on X posted the Charlie Kirk shooter confirmed to be Michael Mallison with a photo of the Torontonian.
Michael, you see your name and your photo linked to an assassination in the United States. Your initial reaction?
Shock and horror. I've heard horrible things about people having their identity stolen.
Quickly, photos of Mallison taken from his social media pages started to circle the internet. Even Grok, the AI chatbot on Elon Musk's X, alleged that Mallison was likely the suspect arrested in the shooting.
Michael, where were you yesterday at about 2:20 Eastern Time?
Actually driving around, we had a busy day. My wife and I went to Yorkdale and then to another store looking for luggage.
Mallison has had legitimate concerns for his safety. The allegations from a fake account, another reminder of a growing lack of verified content on social media sites and the real-life consequences.
They are allowing things to slip through on their platform, and they don't put in enough safeguards to prevent things like this from happening.
I'm just a quiet, normal guy, ordinary guy. I like to exercise. I go rowing in the morning, and I come home and potter around the house. I have no need for any publicity, thank you very much.
Mallison has contacted local authorities out of concern, and he's sharing his story in hopes of spreading factual reports that he has no association with the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Adrian Gobriel, CTV News, Toronto.
More than 80 people are now alleging they were sexually assaulted at a well-known Quebec spa after a Montreal woman filed a proposed class action lawsuit last month. The woman, who is the lead plaintiff, claims she was sexually assaulted by a male massage therapist at the Nordique Spa Village in Chelsea, north of Gatineau, last December. The class action still needs to be certified. The spa says it is cooperating with authorities. The NHL is reinstating 5 players acquitted in the Hockey Canada trial, and they'll be eligible to take part in games starting December 1st. Each had been charged with sexual assault in connection to an alleged incident in a London, Ontario hotel in June 2018. The Crown says it will not appeal. And a man in his 70s is facing 2 counts of dangerous driving causing death and bodily harm after he allegedly crashed his SUV into a daycare north of Toronto yesterday. A toddler was killed and 6 other children were injured, including one who remains in critical condition. The Ontario government says it plans to ban the use of parking spaces near windows, entrances, and exterior walls of childcare facilities. Toronto's police chief expressed deep concern late today about the number of the city's homicides this year that involve teen suspects. This follows the arrest of a 16-year-old charged after a young boy was killed by a stray bullet. Here's CTV's John Vanavelli-Rao.
Looking at the headlines from Toronto over the last year, it's been striking how young some of the suspects have been in several high-profile crimes and shootings.
It used to be we were all shocked and appalled when a 17 or 18-year-old got arrested for these types of offenses. Now we're seeing 12, 13, 14-year-olds involved in some very brutal crimes.
On Wednesday, police announced the arrest of a 16-year-old in connection with the shooting death of this 8-year-old killed by a stray bullet. It follows incidents including a 14-year-old charged in July with stabbing to death a senior in a parking lot. And last week, a 12-year-old was charged after a shooting in Markham. Toronto's police chief troubled by it all and says a striking percentage of accused murderers this year have been under 18.
We've had 30 homicides, which is an incredible decrease from previous years, yet we've had 13 young people charged. Incredibly disturbing numbers.
Complicating the picture, the number of young people arrested for firearms offenses has actually fallen in Toronto, just over 100 so far this year, compared with 127 this time last year. And nationwide, the overall youth crime rate fell in 2024. Still, youth violent crime seems to be climbing.
One possibility.
This criminology professor says in part what needs to be looked at is whether gangs are recruiting young offenders to engage in extreme violence because they're sheltered by the justice system.
You go out and commit the homicide or the carjacking or the robbery, because if you do get caught, you're going to suffer less severe consequences than the adult members of the gang.
Toronto's police chief calling the situation very concerning and not just a policing issue, calling on all levels of government to find a solution. John Vanavelli-Rao, CTV News, Toronto.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre says his party plans to bring in a bail reform bill this fall.
They will then have the onus on them to prove that it is safe to release them on bail.
Poilievre says the proposal would make it harder for people accused of serious crimes to get bail. The Prime Minister says the government will introduce its own version of bail reform in the fall sitting of Parliament to make the laws tougher on those accused of serious crimes. Turning now to the fallout from a W5 investigation, Crown prosecutors in Toronto have dropped charges against 2 car salesmen accused of selling stolen vehicles. CTV's John Woodward explains why.
Mr. Bachnick, the Crown has no reasonable prospect of conviction.
That message from Crown prosecutors, a relief for Harris Bachnick. He's now won his fight with the criminal justice system.
It was botched from the word go.
Bachnick and fellow car salesman Fatty Zito faced almost 200 charges between them out of Project Warden. Police accused them of selling more than $2 million worth of stolen cars out of this Toronto dealership and covering it up by faking Carfax vehicle history reports.
The dealership's own funds were then used to buy the vehicles, which were fraudulently presented as legitimate.
The charges laid at the peak of a vehicle theft crime wave that prompted many arrests as well as progress in stopping stolen cars at the ports. When W5 did the homework with the dealer's records, we found evidence some cars were stolen, at least 3 buyers who couldn't get insurance, and 12 cars whose vehicle identification numbers were listed as being exported out of Canada before they were sold in Toronto. We also found proof that those Carfax reports could not have been altered. The ones that were provided in the sales actually matched the ones that were issued by Carfax. This former Toronto police detective said those reports could have been a big piece of evidence that linked the salesman to the crime. Without that, the Crown told Bachnick, there was no reasonable chance of conviction in the case.
What seems to be clear in this particular situation is that not all those I's were dotted, not all those T's were crossed.
There were 176 charges withdrawn. There was no evidence of it, and I submit from the first day on, myself, the co-accused, that nobody had any part in this. Everything that we did was above board.
Bachnick says he was duped, just like the people who bought those stolen cars, but he doesn't know by whom. That leaves a big unanswered question. If the salesmen weren't involved, who was? John Woodward, CTV News.
Coming up.
It's the lack of respect under the Canadian regime that is really annoying.
Why the Parti Québécois leader is speaking out in Alberta. The Parti Québécois leader is in Alberta speaking out about what he calls federal abuses of powers. Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon said if he were Quebec's premier, cooperation with Alberta would be on the table. CTV's Quebec bureau chief Geneviève Beauchemin on his campaign to find common ground.
On Alberta soil, the Quebec flag was on hand for the leader of the Parti Québécois at the University of Calgary, the sovereignist leader drawing parallels between 2 provinces that have often been at odds.
It's the lack of respect under the Canadian regime that is really annoying for both Albertans and Quebec, maybe for different reasons, but it is a reality.
He had kind words for Premier Danielle Smith, saying she's playing her cards right and standing up to Ottawa. The message delivered in Calgary, but meant to be heard in his home province, showing he has the chops of a premier.
It's part of a broader strategy for him, but that's the main, of course, I would say audience for that is not people in Alberta, it's actually sovereignist in Quebec.
With Quebec's election just a year away, the PQ leader is leading in the polls, far ahead of Premier François Legault, who was once Canada's most popular premier. Now an Angus Reid survey shows he is the least popular, with the approval of just 1 in 5 Quebecers.
Un traitement choc.
This week, Legault shuffled his cabinet, trying to hit the reset button.
Une explosion de l'immigration.
He spoke of immigration, Quebec's identity, and his critics say he launched a war against the government and public services to win back support.
Une sorte de Dodge québécois.
Monsieur Legault is creating a kind of Quebec Doge, said Ruba Gazal of the provincial party Quebec Solidaire. Now, despite the PQ's lead, Legault said his desire to fight was greater than ever.
C'est l'amour du peuple québécois, c'est tout.
Inspired, he said, by his love for Quebecers. Some analysts, though, say that climbing back up and past the Parti Québécois in just over a year will be a challenge for Legault. Geneviève Beauchemin, CTV News, Montreal.
Former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro has been sentenced to 27 years in prison after the country's top court convicted him in a landmark case. He was convicted of plotting a military coup to remain in power after losing the 2022 election. The far-right populist and Trump ally is the first former president in Brazil's history to be convicted for attacking democracy. Still ahead.
I was like, you know what?
I'll take her.
What happened when this man tried to take his pet alligator to a retail giant? Canadian consumers can now claim their slice of compensation in a $500 million bread price-fixing payout. The Loblaw Weston settlement stems from two class actions involving major grocery giants accused of overcharging and participating in an industry-wide scheme to fix the price of bread. Eligible customers who bought bread between January 2001 and December 2021 must submit a completed claim form by December 12th.
Restaurants, we've been to Denny's where she's a star there. She gets VIP treatment.
And a Pennsylvania man says his registered emotional support alligator gets a warm welcome at Denny's, but not at Walmart. After some customer complaints, the retail giant banned the reptile. Still ahead, the surprise encounter for a Hollywood star at TIFF. The Rock surprised staff at a Toronto gym this week before the premiere of his new film at TIFF. But it was a family connection on the red carpet that surprised him. Here's CTV's Andrea Case.
When Dwayne Johnson arrived for his TIFF in Conversation event at the Royal Alexandra Theatre this week, he had no idea what was cooking or who was waiting for him on the other side of the barrier.
Andrea, I had a dream, as Martin Luther King would say.
In the crowd, Pamela Houston from the Ontario Black History Society. She was on a mission.
I said to the young people, when Dwayne gets out of the car, call him Dewey, because that's his family name. Nobody knows that. So he stopped and turned around because Dewey. Then they said, "Your dad, your dad." Dwayne looked at the banner and he held his heart. Then he walked through the gates that are blocking people so he can have a better look at his dad.
In 2015, the OBH created a Black Athletes in Sports exhibit, and in their archives, an audio recording of champion wrestler Rocky Johnson.
And I'm very proud that I was the first Black Canadian heavyweight wrestling champion ever was.
Wow.
And I'm very, very proud of that. If I can do it, other people can do it too.
Rocky died in 2020. He was born in Amherst, Nova Scotia, and oh yes, he just happens to be Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's dad. Also in the crowd, David Rosen.
By the way, I'm your cousin David. How you doing? Good to see you.
He got out of the car. I shouted that I was his cousin. Within a couple of minutes, he came over, shook hands. He was very gracious, and I really truly feel we made a connection, and that this is not the last time that we're going to see each other.
I'm still in awe. That's all I can say.
Andrea Case, CTV News.
What a great story. That's a snapshot of this Thursday. Heather's here tomorrow. For all of us at CTV National News, thanks for watching and good night.